Welcome to the Mean Streets of Gadgetzan. I will be your tour guide. Here with you as always, I am Justice, and joining me for the first time with actual video, so you know he's not just a voice in my head, is Owen.
Yes, but you may want to keep your hands and feet inside the vehicle at all times.
It will be important. There is a lot going on out there. We are here to go over kind of the new strongest decks in our brand new Gadgetzan meta. It's still a little bit new, but enough time has passed. We have a pretty good idea what's strong right now. Doesn't guarantee that that's what's going to be strong in the future, but we have a good place to start. So this video will actually be split up into two parts. The one you're watching right now will be going over the aggro or aggressive decks that are very strong right now, and go ahead and look for the second part, which will go over the control/mid-range decks that are looking good. So let's jump right into it. We are going to start with probably the most popular / infamous deck that is currently rampaging across ladder, which is Pirate Warrior. Again, we are talking about aggro decks, and right now this is probably the king of aggro. Aggro Warrior did exist before Gadgetzan, but it got a huge boost with the expansion. The new cards that really made it take off to the next level. Patches the Pirate, which obviously helped all pirate decks. That is our beautiful 1 mana 1/1 charge that summons itself from the deck whenever you play another pirate. So how are we going to do that? Well, one of the best ways is with another new card, Small Time Buccaneer, a 1 mana 1/2 that gets +2 attack while you have a weapon equipped. As you might imagine, playing a 1/2 on turn 1 that also summons a 1/1 with charge, that also becomes a 3/2 next turn when you put down a War Axe, pretty damn good. It's a lot of damage. But he's not the only way to get out your patches on turn 1. You also have 2 copies of South Sea Deckhand, which again you'll see in any pirate list. And really, this deck is able to rush you down in, well, a few ways, really. N'Zoth's First Mate, another 1-drop pirate that does give you a weapon, so also a great way to bring out patches and works with Small Time Buccaneer. You have a lot of weapons between that, the Fiery War Axe, the Arcanite Reapers, the upgrades, which can turn your weapons into just absolute monsters of damage. You do have, of course, the things that made Aggro Warrior work before. Heroic Strike, which gives your hero +4 attack this turn. You have Mortal Strike, which deals either 4 or 6 damage, depending how much health you have. You have your Chargers and Kor'kron Elites, and Leroy Jenkins, of course, as well as South Sea Deckhand. Your Bloodsail Raider. Battlecry gains attack equal to the attack of your weapon, can be absolutely huge and a pain for your opponent to deal with. Bloodsail Cultist gives your weapon +1/+1 along with the upgrade. There is just a ton, just an absolute ton of ways for this deck to do a lot of damage very quickly. And it's what makes it one of the best ladder decks right now, because if you can attain even, you know, a decent win rate with it, say 55%, given the speed at which this deck plays, you can get through a lot of games quickly, which in our current ladder system is very valuable.
Yeah, and the nice thing about this deck as well is that one way or the other, the game is often over by the 6th turn. Either you've completely killed them, or they've stabilized to a point where they're outside of your reach. So it means that it's, you know, even better for ladder because you don't even necessarily have to force yourself to play through the remainder of a losing game. You can just concede and move on to the next one.
Exactly. And again, it is just a very strong deck. It's able to rush down your opponent very quickly. As I said, the game's often over by turn 6 because you've often won by then. The amount of damage it's able to push through is absolutely insane. Obviously, if you play against a deck that you aren't able to kill by that time and you start running out of steam, there's really not much in the way of comeback mechanism in this deck. Aside from, unless they're just at a very low life total and one good, you know, top deck amount of damage, whether it be Leroy or Mortal Strike or something, will win the game. Other than that, you don't really have a way to come back, but more often than not, the deck doesn't need it, which is part of what makes it so strong.
Yeah, it very much is an all-in deck. So how do you beat this deck then? What is this deck weak to? 'Cause it seems very dominant right now.
It is. One of the nice parts, and nice for the opponent, parts about a lot of the pirates is that they are low on health. So N'Zoth's First Mate has 1 health. South Sea Deckhand has 1 health. Small Time Buccaneer only has 2 health. Even the Bloodsail Raider, Dread Corsair, they have 3 health. Corcoran Elite has 3 health. Really, the only thing above that is Frothian Berserker and Bloodsail Cultist, which have 4. So any deck that's able to put up some walls early, like say a Dragon Priest that can have a Twilight Whelp that can actually trade into multiple minions, your Wormrest Agent, your Twilight Guardian, those kinds of things, which basically make your opponent not able to push the damage they want to while they're losing their minions at the same time. Slash something that has effective board clears, like say Arena Lock's Demon Wrath can actually, that 2 damage can clear out most of this deck's minions. Of course, the key is living to that point, which is very draw dependent on both sides. A very aggressive draw from a Pirate Warrior with a not so great draw against Arena Lock can mean that you're dead before you even have a chance to play Reno. But those are really your ways of doing it. There's a reason why the deck we'll talk about next, Shaman, works. Maelstrom Portal can actually, even without spell damage, clear out a lot of this deck's minions. So basically you're looking at AoE and fat taunts that allow you to keep board control while keeping your life total safe.
Yeah, and again, it's really important to note here that this deck does not have an easy way to clear away taunts. Playing taunt minions is almost the same as just increasing your life total at the same time, but often they'll have to trade in minions as well, so...
Exactly, so they lose their minions that can push damage while also not damaging you at the same time, so kind of a double win for you as the other player if you're able to pull it off.
Yes, precisely. So, the next deck that we will be talking about is Aggro Shaman. So, Aggro Shaman, I've heard that deck list before. Like, that seems very familiar. And anybody who's played before Whispers of the Old Gods will definitely be familiar with the basic strategy of this deck. Basically, it's very much the same as the pre-Whispers Aggro Shaman deck. The way that deck used to work and the way that this one does now is basically rushing the opponent down with early minions, and then from there, kind of abandoning the board, and then clearing the opponent's life total away with the outstanding reach that the deck provides. So, okay, that's something that Shaman's always been able to do, so what's different in this set? So, one of the big things that this deck has gained from the new set, I would say, is, again, the Pirate package. Shaman has always had really strong early weapons, or has recently received early weapons with Spirit Claws, and then in this set, Jade Claws, which gives the Shaman access to early weapons to turn on your Small-Time Buccaneer, which is, again, I think one of the... Apart from Patches the Pirate, Small-Time Buccaneer, I feel, is one of the most important keys for why these Pirate decks are so aggressive and dominant.
Absolutely.
The deck also has a pretty extensive suite of reach spells, spells that can deal damage despite the opponent having a taunt or something in play, with Lightning Bolt, Lava Burst, and Jade Lightning. The Jade Golem mechanic has been added to the Shaman class, which means that now it has some more high-tempo tools by being able to deal damage and also progress your board by developing a minion. Even if it's a 1/1 or a 2/2, can still be very powerful. And given that Shaman has access to Flametongue Totem, this also means that this class is better positioned to take advantage of stray bodies on the board.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's actually what sets this list apart from Old Aggro Shaman, and what actually makes it really very interesting to me, and actually a more appealing deck to play, is it just has a little bit more going on. The Old Aggro Shaman was more point everything at face and hope they die by turn 5. That's obviously oversimplifying, but it had a lot to do with it. This one has a little bit more. You have the Pirate package, you have a little bit of the Jade package. You don't have everything that you can do with Jade, but that's because a lot of the other Jade cards are focused more towards mid to late game. This simply has the Jade Claws, which are a solid weapon on its own. As you said, turns on Small-Time Buccaneer, does bring out a Jade Golem, and you have the Jade Lightnings because, hey, that 4 damage can be pointed at face, or it can help take out a taunt that's in your way, something that the Warrior had a little bit more trouble doing. This list in particular is a little bit interesting. It does come from Jowen. He's an Australian Hearthstone player. He did use this list to get to #1 legend on his server. It does use 1 Lava Burst. A lot of lists that you'll see use 2. Owen and I were kind of actually discussing this beforehand as to why that might be. Might have felt the need to, say, play the Argent Horse Rider in its place, just for a little bit extra charge damage, something that can take board control if you need it, rather than having to use the direct damage to do it. playing a second Flame Reef's Faceless, playing your Doomhammer and Rockbiters, which some lists run, some lists don't. So it's certainly different choices made on his part, but the main idea remains the same. You build up the board they can't deal with, and you're able to deal a lot of damage very quickly. When, as you said, this deck does have fantastic reach. So yeah, it's again very, very aggressive, just like our Pirate Warrior friend is, just a little bit differently, and actually has a decent matchup against the Pirate Warrior, specifically because it can do a little better at maintaining board control, which is how you often win in an aggro versus aggro matchup of who can actually have their minions stay alive.
And that's a really important thing to remember too when you're in the because oftentimes if you're playing one of these two decks on ladder, it's not uncommon that you'll end up playing against someone who's playing a very similar deck list, and oftentimes the impulse might be, well, I'm just going to push face because I'm a face deck. But when you're in that aggressive versus aggressive deck matchup, it's important to maintain board control because your minions are actually better sources of damage over time than like your weapons are or your spells are. Right. So that's pretty important. And the fact that as a shaman you have a lot of natural taunts means that your deck is especially resilient to what the pirate warrior deck is trying to do. The fact that if you don't draw Sir Finley, if you don't play Sir Finley early on, you can use your totem and occasionally roll a taunt totem. Well, that 0/2 taunt might prevent 6 damage from an Arcanite Reaper. That's pretty big. Yeah. And the fact that you can play your Jade Claws and clear away their 1/1 while creating a 1/1 of your own, pretty powerful. So again, I think personally, if I were to choose an aggressive deck right now for ladder, I think that this is the deck that I would be playing.
I'm inclined to agree, and I think it just largely has to do with its ability to pretty cleanly take on Pirate Warrior, which does seem to be actually the most popular ladder deck right now, and the fact that this deck can have a favorable matchup against it, I agree. I think this does actually make it a slightly more effective choice.
Yes, although it does depend on what you're playing against. I think this is certainly better against Pirate Warrior. The matchup against Reno Warlock isn't terrible either, though, since a lot of your minions do have 3 health, so you get to dodge the Demon Wrath, and if they're playing Hellfire, that they're actually damaging themselves and may put themselves within burn range fairly early on.
Right, exactly. So the last aggro deck we're going to talk about, which should surprise everybody that it's still pirate-based, no way, is going to be Pirate Rogue, of all things. This one is a little bit different. I will say this list was piloted by Asian player Rufang, again, to #1 legend on the Asian server. I've played around a bit with this list. I am a fan of it. I think it is something that people aren't expecting as much. I think right now people seeing Rogue are expecting either straight Miracle or more of the mid-rangey Jade version, whereas this is extremely aggressive. We don't need to harp too much on the whole pirate thing. We've gone over all that. I will say that one neat thing about the Rogue version is that, unless I miscounted, which I may have, I believe they have the largest number of 1-drop pirates out of the 3, because in addition to your Small-Time Buccaneer and South Sea Deckhand, the other lists each had 1 extra. This has 2, actually, with Buccaneer and Swashbuckler. Both of which are actually pretty solid cards. So I'm not going to say guaranteed, but it's very likely you're going to be able to bring out a pirate plus patches on turn 1. You actually have a better chance with this deck than the other 2, which isn't nothing on its own. You're going to notice some weird choices in this list. Defias Ringleader is something that obviously hasn't seen a whole lot of play outside of maybe Arena. Same with Undercity Valiant. But they do provide you with something. Defias Ringleader, again, this is a very aggressive deck. It's just, hey, I just put 4 for 2 mana, I put 4 power on the board. Undercity Valiant's 1 damage. No, it's not really the point in, dealing that 1 face damage, but given all the other aggressive decks that are out there, it's putting out a 3/2 and taking out one of their minions at the same time because there's just a lot of 1 health minions that are out there right now. SI7 Agent, again, can clear out a small minion while putting a threat on the board. One of the cards that I really want to talk about the most, actually, because the other decks don't run it, even though it is a neutral card, is South Sea Captain. It is a 3-mana 3/3. Your other pirates have +1/+1. I think it's almost a Flame Tongue Totem replacement. for this deck, which is probably why the Shaman deck doesn't need it. And frankly, it's probably just a little off of what the Warrior deck is trying to do. So it is 1 more mana, which is sometimes an issue, but it is a 3/3 body rather than 0/3, and it doesn't matter where your minions are placed on the board, whereas Flametongue Totem cares greatly about placement and can only buff 2 minions at a time, whereas this can buff more. I'm pointing this out not because I'm saying this is definitely the best thing to do. I don't know if this list is completely optimized, to be honest with you, especially because there are some weird choices. I will say that getting to rank 1 legend on the Asian server, which is the most populated server in the world, is an impressive achievement. And in my experience with the deck so far, I haven't played a ton, but it's felt very strong. Is it better than the Warrior or Shaman decks? Not necessarily. But if you want to do something a little bit different, and if you do value the surprise factor, which this deck does bring, whereas those do not, then this is something that you can try out and kind of decide for yourself, again, is the list optimized, and would I rather be playing this compared to the other aggro decks that are available right now?
Yes, and for the record, I actually have played against a variant of this deck. It might have actually even been the same one, but having the opponent, as a Reno Lock player, typically, when you're mulliganing against a rogue deck, you're expecting to have, either a mid-range or a, game where I'm racing against the Gadgetzan Auctioneer. You're not typically expecting a fast start, so it's not improbable to start the game with something like Small-Time Buccaneer, like Small-Time Buccaneer, and then coin Cold Blood onto Patches, and then suddenly they took 5 damage on turn 1, and then on the following turn they took like another 8. It's actually possible with this deck. With the proper draw, your opponent could be dead as early as turn 4, maybe even turn 3, but I think turn 4 is the earliest that this particular list is capable of.
Yeah, and the other thing too, which I failed to mention in my initial assessment, is one of the reasons why you're doing Rogue. Again, you do have access to 1 extra 1-drop Pirate, which is still a reasonable thing to run. You do have the Cold Bloods, which are really nice. You do have the Backstabs for the early board control, because that's the thing with this deck. You do, over the first couple turns, you are actually looking to have board control, and then after that, you're just using that to swing a whole bunch of damage at the face to try to win by like turn 5, turn 6. The other thing too to mention is a Rogue hero power. This is the only class that is guaranteed to have access to a weapon for, say, Small-Time Buccaneer or the Dread Corsair. You're the only class that is guaranteed no matter what. If you want a weapon, it is there. Obviously, it's a weaker weapon than, say, War Axe or Arcanite Reaper or Jade Claws. But it is always an option, and I think that is one of the reasons why you might choose to run this deck if you do feel so inclined.
So forgive me for being a little bit jaded here, but why would I want to play this aggressive version of this deck as opposed to playing like a Jade Golem deck or a Miracle Rogue deck, a deck that's a little bit more tried and true and has maybe a little bit more late game staying power, but still can fight off against aggressive decks?
I think that's a fair question. It's really going to come down to what style you prefer, and also your personal metagame, so to speak. If you're playing against a lot of decks where you feel that having more of a late game is relevant, where you want to, say, use the Gadgetzan Auctioneer engine for Miracle Rogue, or just bringing out your Jade Golem army is your better win condition, then those decks will be a better choice. However, if you feel that you're playing against decks where being able to rush them down, where being able to just deal that damage and win the game by turn 5 or turn 6 is going to be more relevant. Say, if you're going against Reno Lock and you're just like, I can't beat this deck in a late game, but if I can kill them by turn 5, then I'm good to go, then this might be right for you. Or you might just prefer, you might be more of an aggro player, you might be more of a, mid-rangey control player. So it really comes down to personal preference. I think it's a little early to say that one is definitively better than the other. This is really just going to come down to what kind of deck you prefer. And especially given that whether you like it or you don't, our current ladder system does encourage playing a lot of games in a short amount of time. So if you do subscribe to that theory, then the aggro version of Rogue might be right for you.
I see. So do you feel that this deck is better to ladder with than like Auctioneer Rogue, the Miracle Rogue version? Right
now, yes. I think that very much could change, probably not even in the distant future. But at this moment in time, yeah, if you're a decent aggro player, if you know what you're doing with the deck, after you get a little, a few games under your belt and get a feel for it, I think it can do well for you.
Okay.
All right, so That will wrap up the first part of our video on strong decks on the mean streets of Gadgetzan. You'll be reminded again at the end of the next one, but again, don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, all those beautiful things that you've heard 8,000 people tell you to do before. But you definitely be on the lookout for the second video, which will go over the control decks if you're just not that aggro kind of player.
Thanks for joining us at Judgment Gaming, and we'll see you next time.